was glad when they said, come let us go to the house of the Lord. I was glad when they say, come let us go to the church with no walls. You are my brother, you are my sister. From all over the world we are united in the house of God, in the church with no walls.
Welcome to this edition of The Church with No Walls. I am your host, Ryan Dearbone, and today we continue our conversation on politics and religion with Professor Emeritus from Western Kentucky University, Dean Larry Snyder.
And then you also see when Mamdani became New York's mayor, there was a lot of questioning about his religion, just because, and this is just from me, what I've seen is that a lot of people really don't know what his religious beliefs are. They just know that, or, if somebody's Muslim, they talk about Omar. They just because your religion is not Christian.
Yes.
That it's an automatic red flag about this person. But if we're still going by the same tenets of religion doesn't really matter, it's what they're going to do as a political official, that should never be brought into the conversation.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up about Islam. Current estimates are that anywhere from 10 to 20% of the enslaved persons that were brought to this continent were Muslim when they arrived. And remnants of Islam remained and became part of the religious life of enslaved peoples, and then into and after liberation. So Islam has been here from the beginning, and one of the more interesting examples, I think, of this discussion goes back to 1797. It was really our first war as a nation. We went to war with the Barbary pirates off of Tripoli. Oh wow! And it was all about shipping rights and so forth. And we went to war, and we blockaded Tripoli, and we forced a treaty. What's interesting is the language of that treaty. And this is 1797. John Adams is the president. And the treaty says, be clear. We are going to be very clear here. This war is not about religion. The United States is by no means a Christian nation. And we are not at war with you because you are a Muslim. They used a different word for it. But it's written right into the contract of the treaty. We are not a Christian nation. This was the understanding of the United States in the early republic, was to recognize that we are in no way officially a Christian nation. And so Islam has this really interesting history within the United States, and bring that forward. Much of the rhetoric from folks on the extreme right is about a real fear, Islamophobia, real fear of Muslims, and what they refer to as Sharia, which is Muslim law. And Muslim law is going to become the rule of the land in these communities and our schools, and their religious law is going to dominate, without ever stopping to think that in one breath they're condemning Sharia and saying we don't want to build, as they have in Tennessee, we don't want to build this. The irony is folks are arguing against Sharia and the fact that Muslims might put Islamic law in place. At the same time, they're arguing that we must put up the Ten Commandments in classrooms, and we want to sort of mandate what they perceive as Christian sort of laws, particularly as related to reproduction, right? And without ever stopping to think about the irony of that. Yeah. It's okay if we have Christian Sharia, we just can't have Muslim Sharia, right?
Yeah.
And the genius of the United States is say, no, we don't have either one of those here, and we allow both to flourish as they will. If you think that God is on your side, okay, but you're going to have to sort of prove that someplace else. and in the end, truth will prevail. And if you're on the side of truth, then it will. But we're going to leave that to the market to decide. Is essentially how it's played out.
Right, and it just seems like whenever somebody and obviously I understand why people use scripture and stuff like that, but it's like what we talk about in broadcasting. A soundbite. You can manipulate a soundbite however you want to. I can take John 3:16 and make it work for me, and if you're opposing to me, you can take it and make it work for you. So when I see lawmakers that are using scriptures, and they're going to use it, that's just part of the sell, whether it's to be elected or whether it's to get something, a law they want. It always gives me pause because I'm like, are you using it in its intention? How are you using it? Why are you using that scripture? What scripture are you using and omitting another scripture that may counterbalance that one? Again, it goes back to that. What is your reasoning for it? You know, if we're using religion as a bullet in a gun, if you will, why are you using it? What's the end game?
Yeah. I mean, you can make the case for just about anything looking at the Bible. Mm-hmm. You can find some justification for your angle, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that you have been faithful to the text, and sort of picking and choosing to find the right. And everybody does it. Folks do it on the right and they do it on the left, which is, part of the problem. And it's why I would argue that it's really important to have scholars of religion, and in this case Christianity and Scripture, involved in the conversation to say, wait a minute, that's not what that means, right? And so that is a place where I think religion can play a very valuable role in cultural conversations, and why I think the study of religion is really important. And I would not be on the side that says, well, because we have separation of church and state, we can't talk about. Well, that's just silly, because it's important to everyone else, and it's really important to have folks who actually know what they're talking about enter into the conversation. And so I think it's really important for our students of whatever level to have some basic level of religious literacy. I think that's part of what it means to be an educated person. And I think it also allows you to participate more fully in the body politic. So I would argue for religious education, but not religious education with the intention of conversion. It's true education. And I think that's really important. I spent my career doing that.
Yeah, so, I mean, you've taught classes about that.
Yes.
So looking at the culture right now, the climate of politics and religion, where are we with it? Because a lot of people would say we're in a very toxic time with it. You've seen the president and the Pope even sparring back and forth. So a lot of people would say we're not in a healthy place when it comes to religion and politics. And
J.D. Vance telling the Pope that he needs to do better on theology. I mean,
and I'm sure these are things that have been said behind closed doors for years, but to the fact that it's now being said out in public, it's on paper, it's on record. Yeah. That we're having political, religious sparring, like, oh, well, you need to stick to religion, oh, well, you need to stick to politics, or you need to do better at politics. Where are we at in this climate?
Well, I mean, in some ways, we're fraught and confused. I mean, that's just where we are. But looking back historically, as I said earlier, this is simply the latest iteration of a conversation we've had in this country, at least for 250 plus years. About these sorts of things. But I think our present moment is a particularly precarious one because the implications of decisions are so perilous and downright dangerous that I think we're at a moment where we need some calm, informed discussion about issues. And the Pope has every right to speak as the head of the Catholic Church and say, there's such a thing as a right war and a wrong war. And as Catholics, we believe in this. And as Catholics, we're part of the body politic, and we need to speak into power, right? And that's what he's doing. He's also been very careful to say, no, I'm not in a position to make laws and policy, right?
Yeah.
Now, popes in the past have done that, and it didn't work out very well. And so that's one of the lessons learned. So we are in that kind of a very strange moment where religion is in the air and on the airwaves all the time, but it's not very informed. And it's being used more as a cudgel than as something to help further the conversation and move the discussion. So from that perspective, I think it's, as a scholar of religion, but also as a person of faith, it's something that I watch with a great deal of trepidation and downright frustration a good part of the time. When folks are having these discussions and talking about things that, quite frankly, they don't have a clue about. They really don't. And this is where it's really important for folks with some knowledge of these matters to have a voice and to speak up. And I think that's really important.
And one thing kind of, we see it on a national level, but then we also see it trickle down into the fact that on any given Sunday at any given church, you've got churches and pastors that will either attack politics, and they will be very political in the pulpit, and they will use the pulpit as a place to endorse candidates, to endorse ideas and ideologies. You've got some pastors that will stay as far away from politics as possible because they don't want to rock the boat or make anything more damaging or create issue. And then you've got those who, whether they're financially or whatever, they are becoming parts of these political movements. They are saying, our church is aligning with this candidate. Our church is aligning with this practice, whether it's, LGBTQ, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whereas all these things, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point, you're seeing these different sects of religion splitting off, how they're managing religion and politics. What does that, I guess, what does that do when you start to see the silent ones, the ones who are using the pulpit as their podium to speak religion, and then the ones who are using their power maybe more behind the scenes to get behind what they want to see politically done?
Well, and here's where I have to move off into sort of personal opinion and perspective here. I think the Christian church has been most effective when it has spoken prophetically, but not necessarily from a position of power. I don't think Christianity historically has done particularly well when it's been in a position of power. We do best when we are speaking prophetically and reminding those in positions of power that there is a higher power to which they too, all of us, are answerable, and that there are other principles besides just power and victory. And economic success. There are other things that are important to human flourishing, and that's where religion is most effective in the long run, and has been able to sort of speak with an authentic voice. When the church has real political power and suddenly becomes one of the political actors, at that point, the authenticity of the voice becomes suspect, because now they have something to lose politically, and it does cause one to question, right? Is this a true matter of faith, or is this a matter of political expediency? So again, as a scholar and as a person of faith, I'm much more comfortable with the church on the outside looking in than I am on the inside looking out.
So now, that kind of being said, somebody like, we'll use Raphael Warnock.
Yeah.
Because he is both a politician
Yes.
and a man of the cloth, a preacher. And I can't speak for him, neither can you, but that would almost seem like a really complicated slope, because he has not only the stage as a politician to talk, but he also has the stage as a pastor to talk to his congregation, to rally them behind his beliefs, his thoughts, what he interprets the Bible as.
Right.
Is that not a slippery slope as well when we see politicians and as religious figures as well?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Because one of the things I didn't talk about earlier is that the black church is kind of an outlier in this whole conversation. Sociologists who sort of try to define and then measure Christian nationalism and what those markers are and who does this. And so according to those measures, the black church historically is very high on the Christian nationalism scale. Because the black church has had to speak from the beginning, not just about care of soul, but about care of the body and communities who were oppressed and who often face violence and so forth. So the black church, I think, is a really good place for us to look right now. Both historically for models, but also for leadership to speak into this time, because the black church recognizes that you cannot be divorced from the body politic. On the other hand, the black church knows what it means to speak not from a position of power. Mm-hmm. Now you have someone like Warnock, who I think has done a marvelous job, and he is straddling that line. It's a very interesting place for him to be. But we've looked at folks like Frederick Douglass or Martin Luther King Jr. King particularly is an example of a preacher who is also very much in the political fray. But the black church is a little bit different because of its marginal position with regards to power, both economic and political, historically. But I think the black church has a lot to offer in this discussion right now.
So now, this is a hypothetical as we were talking about this. If let's say a preacher or a pastor was able to become the president of the United States, how would that, because you would have a lot of people that, because of that religious tenor, would be opposed to them or in favor of them. How much would they be allowed to put that religion in what they're doing as president, because they are now the leader of the free world, but they are also a Catholic priest, or they are a Baptist preacher? How could that work in concert, or could it work in concert?
Well, it has, historically. We've had some examples of that. I mean, Jimmy Carter is the best example we have in recent memory. He was not an ordained minister, but as we all know, he was a Sunday school teacher and very active in his faith and very outspoken about his faith. And there's no way to look at the life and the career of Carter without understanding that everything he did was motivated from a perspective of the Christian faith. He just did it, right? And he was lambasted on the right, but it was more like his arguments were, you're all not being Christian enough, as we were talking about earlier. We also see in someone like Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was very active in the Presbyterian Church. He'd been at Princeton before coming to Washington, and he really saw our entry into World War I as a divine mission. And he thought this was part of the advance of Christian civilization, and that carried forward into the League of Nations, which eventually became the United Nations after World War II. But he certainly had that angle. Now, in the case of Carter's pushing for peace. The case of Woodrow Wilson, he's pushing for war, right? both of them are arguing from Christian religious perspectives,
right?
But they really, and again, the contexts are different, so it's an exact comparison. But you can sort of see how these things can go in different kinds of directions depending upon what else is going on.
Yeah.
But we do have those two examples of folks who were very religious, and if not the consequences of those religions, you certainly see the imprint, the fingerprints of their faith all over their policies.
And that makes sense. And obviously, you could, like you said, you could kind of make an argument one way or the other for what they did or what they didn't do. Moving forward, what does that look like going forward? Because it almost seems in some ways like we're having a war of conscience with ourselves between what our religion looks like and our politics, and then even just internally. It's almost like you said, some people say you're not Christian enough. Some people might say, if you're conservative, you're not conservative enough because you're not believing these beliefs that these far right conservatives believe from their Christian faith. You're not democratic or liberal enough because you're too close to the conservatives because you don't believe what we believe in the Bible. So where are we headed towards now?
Well, your guess is as good as mine on that one, but I think that we have got to get folks of good conscience together to sit around a table and begin to discuss these matters. Nationally, I think we need a recommitment to the Constitution. I think we need to embrace the First Amendment, not as a way to put a religion in the closet, but as to recognize that there was a brilliance to that decision a compromise decision made by those founders way back in the 18th century that put this together. And it's held together for 250 years. There's a reason for that. And that on the right, there needs to be an understanding that Christians are not the only folks in this country, that we are a country of many different religions and have been from the beginning, that Muslims and Jews and Hindus and Buddhists have a place here. And if you want to convert them, you do that by proving by proving your argument, right?
Yeah.
Not by outline, practice, and belief. But folks on the left, the secularists, need to recognize that to have separation of church and state doesn't mean that there can be no religious discourse in the public sphere. The public square needs to be and is a place where folks of all different stripes can come and talk, and they bring everything with them, including their religion. And secularists need to get over themselves and recognize the fact that religion itself is not the enemy here. That if we truly believe in pluralism on both right and left, folks need to find common ground and allow that public discourse to take place. I think that's really important. And part of that, I think, is the importance of education. And a legitimate education, not proselytizing folks with regard to religion, but actually giving them some real hard facts in history about the role of religion in our own history.
And you kind of alluded to this, and this is whose job is that? Is that the politicians' jobs? Is that the lawmakers' jobs? Is that us as followers or people who are not in those positions of power to make these things clear and to make these changes and shifts?
We the people, right?
Yep.
As a republic, ultimately the authority falls to the people. And I think we have a right to demand our legislators listen and to participate in conversation with us and be accountable to us. That's the premise of our democratic experiment. That's who we are. And when it comes to religion, that then becomes incumbent upon all of us to have a voice and to enter into the conversation, no matter how difficult that may be. And so I think being in the public square, as uncomfortable as it may be, is an important place for all of us to go right now and to have our voices heard. And I find that's a prophetic voice to myself, because I would much rather in my retirement go off into the corner and go fishing than I would to be out on a march somewhere. I mean, I just would.
Yeah.
But it's really important for my kids and my grandkids. So that's part of what it means to be a citizen. But as a person of faith, it also is part of what it means to be a believer and a disciple. And it's just important for me to participate in that in whatever way I can, because this is about more than me. And I think we all have to get to that point.
I think you're right. And I mean, I think most people are people of faith. Our faith all looks different. It takes different shapes and forms. But the hope is that whatever your faith is doesn't hurt somebody else. It doesn't harm somebody else. It's not intentionally made to destroy or convict somebody else, because as much as you want to convict somebody else with your interpretation of faith, you're probably destroying yourself, because we've all, like it says, we've all fallen short of the glory of God. Right. There's not a perfect person among us.
Yeah.
So even the person who can quote the best scripture, standing on the house floor, has probably done something. Well, I know has done something that has gone against that scripture that they've read.
Right. You know, one of my favorite stories or episodes in American history has to do with a letter that George Washington wrote to a small Jewish congregation who was very concerned. The congregation was very concerned about what life was going to look like for them in the new republic. And as a religious minority, are we going to be forced out of our homes and our jobs like we had seen in Europe? And Washington writes back to them and he says, no, not here. He says, under here, every vine and fig tree provides shelter. I'm paraphrasing, but you can find safety here as long as you can get along with your fellow citizens. There's space for you. There's place for you. And I just think that kind of magnanimity, right? The kind of magnanimous gesture made by Washington is the sort of thing we need these days. And to say, okay, we don't all understand faith and religion the same way, but we're all trying to do the best we can and get through for our lives and our families. And to come back to a commitment to civility, I just think is really important.
Absolutely. Dean Larry Snyder, Professor Emeritus at Western Kentucky University. It's been a pleasure as always. I know I learn something every time you come on. Like I said, we're going to have to get you in the Three Timers Club soon.
Okay.
But no, thank you so much for your time and for your intelligence and for being able to break it down for us. So with that, anything else you'd like to?
No, thank you. I appreciate the work you're doing, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm Ryan Dearbone. I'm the host of Church with No Walls. We thank you for tuning in as always. And as always, take care and be blessed.
Come let us go to the church with no walls. You are my brother. You are my sister. From all over the world we are united in the house of God, in the church with no walls. La 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 la, without walls.